Episode 141 Above Ground Podcast, Vulnerability.
Disclaimer. The hosts of this podcast, Timothy Patrick and Will Foley, are by no means medical professionals. However, having lived experience with mental illness themselves, they have gained useful perspectives on common mental health issues that some of us struggle to overcome on a daily basis. By sharing their stories, they hope to create connection. By creating connection, they hope to help you find your purpose. And through purpose, we can all begin to build the foundation for positive mental health. This is Above Ground Podcast.
Are you ready to lace up your boots, throw up your horns, and jump into the pit? Then let's stomp the stigmas of mental illness. It's time for Above Ground Podcast. Now, Will Foley and Timothy Patrick.
Oh, rolling! Yeah, that was perfect!
Rolling! Jesus Christ! Yeah, still rolling.
Still
Speaking
rolling.
about vulnerability.
Wow!
All right.
Yeah, what's up,
ahead.
everyone? How you like that? All right. What is up, everyone? Welcome to Above Ground Podcast.
Above Ground Podcast, because you can't serve below.
No, you can't. Are you down with TPP?
Yeah, you know me.
Timmy, are you down with vulnerability? No, you're not.
No, you know me. No, I'm not. No, I'm not, but it's unfortunately a part of all this. So it has to be done.
Wow. Wow. All right.
I think so. I think yes, I feel, because I think to make, we need connections. So to make real connections in life, I think you have to be vulnerable.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you do have to be vulnerable.
And I think to, whatever you want to call it, better yourself, work towards the path of higher self, whatever, you have to be vulnerable with yourself. And if you're working with a therapist, you have to be vulnerable with the therapist.
I think that vulnerability is a mindset, and it has to be exercised. And because I don't think that you can learn necessarily how to be vulnerable as much as it is that you uncover your vulnerability. I think you can get better at communicating it and getting more in touch with yourself. But I think that there's a natural, some people just have a natural way of doing it, and other people have to learn how to do it because it's a very uncomfortable thing. So I don't necessarily look at any of this stuff as being vulnerable. I don't look at I just because I don't know why I don't.
Well, probably because it's part of, you're used to doing it. You're more vulnerable than most, especially in this particular area, this subject,
Well, I think this subject kind of begs for it in a way.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think you need, but again, now I'm not saying, and I don't mean that you can't learn it. I just think that there's a certain aspect of vulnerability that you have to come into. It's not like something that somebody can just show you, because there's a certain because it's got to be a comfort. It's a comfort thing. And if you're not comfortable,
yes,
it makes it hard to express.
Yes, and I think that's kind of what I was going to say. I think that, vulnerability is like that moat out back, and you walk in and you're like, but the center of that moat's going to be 6 foot deep. So there's different stages, right?
Sure. So you might dip your toe in the water and walk into the moat, and you're just starting to head down, and you're like, okay, I'm cool with this. This is all right.
So for me, I find vulnerability, just because we're talking about it right now, and I think it's easy to be vulnerable when I'm in a safe comfort, in my comfort zone. You know what I mean? Where I maybe only have a toe in the water.
Okay.
But once I get if I step outside of my comfort zone and I'm in the middle, then it's hard to be vulnerable.
I understand that. And unfortunately, I think most of us are like that. Because now some people do have a totally just throw everything out and just go. Like some people have that ability to just jump in and and swim.
They do.
Where some of us have to learn how to swim, and then others are still scared of going in the water. But you can still learn how to swim.
Yes.
But you're not. There's people that are just natural at being more accessible than others, just because of the way.
Well, I think that go ahead. What?
Well, just because of whether it's their personality or their background or what they do. You know what I mean? There's some
things
being
raised in a certain, a more vulnerable comforting household is going to make it more easy too. Because if you're
actually, I don't know about that, man.
No,
I don't know if it would, because when you're vulnerable, you're exposing yourself. And that means you're generally exposing stuff that most people don't want to hear. And I actually think that
maybe it's exposing stuff that you think that, like, I feel negative. I have shame on this little ball, so I don't want to reveal it. Even though you could look at the ball and be like, oh my God, it's a cute little ball. Give me that ball.
Well, that's true. That's true. But I do think, though, because when you look at the actual definition of vulnerable,
I don't even know what it is. Do you
so
have it?
in the Oxford definition in the Oxford Online Dictionary says it's the quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally, often viewed as exposing weakness. And that's the big key.
Right. It's not. It's a strength, and I know you know that.
Well, I know that, but it's also...
It's weird that definition has, the negative connotation, harm. There's this...
Well,
that's probably why it's viewed that way, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I want to I actually want to read one of our past guests.
Oh, yeah, go.
Valéry Brosseau, who kicks ass.
Yes, she was on an episode of Above Ground Podcast. I believe it was number 86.
Yes, and she's coming back, too.
Yeah.
We're going to have her back. She's actually going to be our first repeat guest.
Nice.
Which is awesome. I can't wait to talk to her again. She's awesome.
In the Blood, 86, number 86.
Yeah, and we, Tim had asked some people to send us their thoughts about vulnerability, and I want to read hers because... she is a mental health advocate, so she's very well spoken, and she wrote a really beautiful thing. Vulnerability is a powerful choice. It is a choice that allows for connection and suppresses the idea that we are alone, that we are unique in our struggles. Being vulnerable is opening ourselves up to the heart of our being and sharing what is raw and what is real. Without vulnerability, we cannot be there for each other. Boundaries require vulnerability. Support requires vulnerability. Mental health awareness requires vulnerability. Breaking down stigma requires vulnerability. By sharing the difficult truths and breaking down the socially acceptable wall that prevents us from talking about the tough stuff, we are opening the door for being human and being there for one another. So even in all those, you think about what you're trying to break down, and you're breaking down all of those negative things. So people don't view vulnerability as a favorable thing all the time.
Okay, I see that now.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
I think a lot of people, and especially in this, alpha male bullshit, macho, dominated crap. Everybody's got to dominate everybody. Nobody wants to expose their weaknesses because they're just afraid that everybody's going to use them against them.
Sure.
Now, luckily, some of us have found our superpowers in exposing our weaknesses, and we've made more connections because of that and things. But vulnerability really does put you out in an exposed way. And that's not comfortable for a lot of people, man.
No,
that's
it's not. And I use that word exposing. I like that she said it was a choice. That's interesting.
It is a choice because you could keep everything under wraps, but why? Why? Because this is the thing we have in common the most. And I heard this recently that we're either at adversity is the one common denominator for everybody. Because you're either going through it now, you're either just got out of adversity, or you're heading into it. because that's just life. Because in between the notes of the song is where the music is. It's in that space in between the notes, right? So it's in between that space of adversity that you find all the good things in life, but everything leads to something else. Now, you may not look at it as a massive adversity, but it could be an adversity. So that's one thing that we all have in common. We all come through some adversity.
Sure.
Now, being able to be vulnerable to share that enough with people is a different thing. It's a different animal.
I actually, when we did this, kind of came up with the idea, and Will said, just kind of do your own kind of definition. So I didn't really look it up. I didn't want to be, have something in my head while I'm trying to come up with my own idea. So I
actually looked at the definition.
You did?
Before I did, because I like the prompt.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just didn't want to have it sway my words or view or anything. So I just wrote that it's an act of exposing oneself, either if it's truthful or not. It's including all the parts, all the flaws, faults, achievements, the positives, the negatives, being honest and open about revealing the things you think or feel with a disregard of any outcome.
Okay, so you kind of looked at it from the what that's going to bring, as opposed to whether somebody's going to accept it or not, which is the outcome. Yeah, okay. All right, I get it. Yeah, that's pretty good. When you said truthful or not, it was the way you read it. I was like,
I know.
I'm like, whether it's accurate or not. I would say probably more.
That's better
because the way it was sounded,
exactly
it was like
what I wanted to say. But yes,
truthful or,
and I was gonna kind of explain it on that part. But you're right. Whether it's accurate or not, that's a way better. Yeah, I have these thoughts, but I can't always get it down with the words.
Yeah,
but that's a good one. Accurate.
I look at vulnerability as the ability to talk about difficult experiences and opening up to negative possible actions or views. And quite honestly, I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks about me. I don't really care, because you know what? That's none of my business. You can think whatever you want about me. I don't care, because I already feel way worse than you're ever going to make me feel. So,
you know what? Do you think that? See, because I used to think that I truly can say it now with more I believe it, that I don't care. But I used to say it I don't care what people think. But I actually really did, because I think I took it with a grain of salt. But if I felt if I felt something that what they were saying, it kind of went into that little bowl.
Oh yeah, I've had that. Okay. Absolutely. However, I just happened to get really comfortable doing this because I just had no other way.
No other way.
Yeah, and I just unfortunately, there's so much. The bubbling just happens so much, and I just felt better to keep doing it and keep sharing and keep sharing.
And as you did that, shared more, did being vulnerable become more easy for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first couple of times, I talked to people about stuff, and especially AFSP and suicide and stuff, man. That would there was a couple of times, when I went to my first couple of trainings, I had to get up and walk out of the room a couple of times, just because it was heavy. Raw and it was heavy, and I was still feeling some of those.
Sure.
Still feeling some of those things, man. But I realized though that there's a beauty in being able to acknowledge that.
There absolutely
is. And then being able to take that and craft it into your own thing.
Yeah. You know what came up a lot? The word risk.
Well, there's a big risk in being vulnerable, right? Man. Because the thing about, especially when it comes to mental health and mental illness, there's so many layers to it, and there is still so much stigma around it. Now, yes, okay, we're getting better. We are definitely getting better at it, and we're getting more people to talk about it, and more people are being open about it. But there's still a lot of stigma about exposing yourself and saying, well, I have a mental illness, because there are things that can happen because of that. People, especially in the private sector, who's to say that you're not going to get something because you express something? Because in that setting, they can, because that's what that is. Where more in the public sector, you can't, because it's not based on, it's not private. So you can't really have that held against you as much as you can out in the other side of the world, where
that makes sense.
And you're really and you're putting especially with this kind of stuff.
I'm gonna share another definition from one of our guests, Lisa Scott, from the podcast What's Next with Lisa. She was on Above Ground podcast number 110. She also has a new book out that is really, really good. So you should check that out. But I just want to read her definition. So Lisa said, I would define it as anything you share with others that has the potential to be judged, rejected, or seen as a weakness. I think it used to feel really scary and panic-filled for me before I learned to accept my own story and be proud of who I am. And then she told a little story about when her book was coming out. She was trying to market and share stuff, and she accidentally shared it to her personal Facebook page, and had friends who didn't know that she wrote a book, and then they found out, but it felt vulnerable to her, and she just had to remind herself that she was proud of what she had done, and allow other people to have their reactions to it. So yeah, she said it was scary, but that's what vulnerability is.
Wow, horns up to Lisa. She's awesome. She really is awesome.
Yeah.
That episode was a lot of fun to do, man.
Yeah, for
She's
sure.
really cool, and that book is good. It's on my bookshelf. Go get it on Amazon. Lisa Scott.
I'll read another one. Actually, we had one of Robbie's Hope ambassadors, Makayla, somewhat recently. It was 134. Her mom, Heather, had replied to my plea of defining, what vulnerability meant to her. So she wrote, being open to discuss, look at, or deal with issues or circumstances that may not be easy or pleasant, making yourself available to experience anything despite it may cause you pain or make you uncomfortable. Vulnerability is not always pleasant, but can be as it may open up opportunities or circumstances you were not looking for or planning for. Vulnerability is a necessary part of life, even though I may not always like the way it makes me feel, brings up memories that may be unpleasant, opens me up for failure or for getting hurt. It can be very scary to allow yourself to be vulnerable with a person or a situation.
Yeah, that's heavy, man.
Right?
Yeah. We all know that the vulnerability expert is Brene Brown. She really broke vulnerability wide open. Mm-hmm. And there's some, in Braving the Wilderness and stuff. There's some good stuff in all those books, man. She actually,
I have a thing of hers. If just because you just said it, let me see. She said, vulnerability feels like a turtle without a shell.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
That's good, right?
That is really good.
Yeah, you can just sum it up like that quick.
And not being vulnerable, you wear an armor.
Right.
And you take that armor off and you're exposed. It's scary.
I wrote that down somewhere, and I don't remember where I wrote it, but I think part of it is that it could be a habit of putting that armor on.
Sure.
Not allowing you, not being mindful enough to allow yourself to that option of not putting the armor on. It's just so often we've been in these uncomfortable places or, uncomfortable emotions that we don't want to feel, so we armor up.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I think it's a habit because if we've done it for...
Yeah, it's habitual for sure. It's habitual for sure.
But she also said that you can't have courage without vulnerability, and you can't set and hold boundaries without vulnerability. It's about the ability to manage uncertainty and expose emotional something without armor. I can't even read my own writing.
Yeah, me neither.
So that, I just wanted to read that turtle part because I thought that was pretty cool, pretty spot on.
Yeah, that is spot on. That is really spot on.
I actually have a couple more I'm going to read. One is from Angela, the Shark Whisperer. Vulnerability is allowing someone into parts of you and your life where they can potentially hurt you, taking a risk by giving them a part of you that not everyone has access to.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it was Jim Carrey that I heard this from that said the most important collateral that we have is the way you make people feel. And let me tell you, that is actually a big responsibility.
It's just, yeah.
Because you realize, like, especially now, man, like 49, like I haven't exactly been.
You know what
the
though? See,
easiest.
I don't know if because that can also. I don't know if I agree with that fully because it can also be have adverse effects for you. It could be weight, like, you know what I mean? Like now you have to strive to make somebody, make sure you have an impression or make somebody feel better.
Sure.
Which is, it could be an added pressure that, I don't necessarily personally, I don't agree with that because there's people that are out here doing the best they can and sometimes barely holding it together. You know what I mean?
Sure. I get where you're coming from. I will say that statement.
No,
really,
I get it.
Really rings true to me, and I don't know, why so much, but I get it, and I think it's just that we all we talk about sensory stuff. We all have we all have certain depths of what we can.
Right.
What we can get to.
Yep.
And some of us just feel things at a different level and feel things more and feel things differently.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure.
But I think that it is super important to remember that, how you make others feel has an effect on you also. And you have to, again, it comes to responsibility. And it comes to the fact that you have to be willing to take on that responsibility. But a lot of times, we don't even know we're taking on that responsibility. But it's being vulnerable enough to realize that and stating that. Because I think that's vulnerable to say you don't know, but I'm willing to learn, too. I think that can be a good step.
For sure. No, I agree with that. That's a big step.
Because we all have to learn. We have to learn how to have the tough conversations. And if more people learned how to have the tough conversations, then we wouldn't have the need for all of this.
Yeah, you might be right. I mean, you definitely have a lot less.
You'd have a lot less. Yeah, you would have a lot less.
I'm going to read, we had Katie on back in 2020, number 75. Nobody puts Katie in a corner. She had a really good one, so I want to read it. Vulnerability, removing your masks, all of them, and sharing your thoughts, feelings, insecurities, accomplishments, your story, your everything with another person. It's speaking without thinking first, without asking how will this be received? How will they react? What will they think of me? It's sharing the skeletons in your closet. It feels scary. You're trusting another person with a part of you, one that maybe you're not so proud of, trusting them to not use things against you at a later date, but it's also freeing. It's owning your voice, your story, what makes you you. It's an opportunity for growth, which I thought was
absolutely.
Pretty,
I love that.
Good, right?
Hi, Katie.
Yeah. So that was Katie. So you can check that episode out. I got a couple more here. This is an anonymous participant. My definition is an open, honest, and candid assessment of one's character, personal attributes, and detriments.
Wow, that's really
To the point.
That's really,
right?
that's really to the point.
Yeah.
Like, that's really succinct, man.
This one is from Axton. For me, it's allowing myself to be seen and loved. Something that was never truly given to me, so I turned it away when it was given to me as an adult. It's to be able to say, I'm not okay because you're expected to be okay. To be able to say that love is warranted in my life and I'm deserving. Being able to say, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. Vulnerability for me looks different in each part of my life because life was always survived by any means necessary.
Wow. Yeah,
Right?
that's wow.
This is a short one, but it's good. This is from Autumn. To be completely transparent with oneself while being susceptible to the insecurity that comes along with it.
Yeah, there's a lot of insecurity.
Like risk, insecurity, you know, that nakedness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That turtle without a shell.
Absolutely, man. That's pretty. That's a wow. That kind of wrapped that right up in there.
Right? I want to read 2 more here. One is from our friend Janneke.
Ah, yes.
So if I said that wrong, she's probably laughing, but it's all right. Vulnerability is a risk. It might break you, but through the cracks is where the light shines. Vulnerability is a game, and no matter how much you lose, you will always win. Vulnerability might wound you, but it will heal you too. Don't run away from this. Don't walk away from it. Come closer. Dip your toes in this water. Know that this is how you grow, how you love, how you become into what you will be.
Wow.
Right?
Yes.
I got chills
you,
on that one.
Thank you.
Cool how she said water, though, and we were kind of talking about, that
dipping
same,
our moat.
Yeah, that same kind of, yeah. Let me read one more from Dr. A, the Misfit therapist, who will be on probably in maybe in a couple weeks after this airs. I don't know if we have a date for it yet, but anyways, she also has a podcast, The Misfit Therapist, that you can check out. But she says the simplest definition of vulnerability is to be physically and or emotionally exposed to something or someone. There is hard labor present in vulnerability. How you respond to said exposure is what makes things complex because it dictates the quality of your life. Get comfortable with vulnerability. We were born to live in it. After all, we were all born naked.
Wow. I like that.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because that's a really good that's a really apt metaphor for vulnerability, being naked.
Right. Oh, you know what? I have one more from let's see. She actually left us a review, which I read already.
Oh,
I think I read it already. But Kara Conaway, she's the host of Business Mama podcast. She's a self-love advocate. But she says, to me, being vulnerable is showing all parts of me. It's owning who I am. It's releasing the worry that someone could find out something about me and judge me or think I'm not good enough. Practicing vulnerability is the ultimate act of self-love. It's like saying, here I am imperfect, I love myself fully, and I am brave enough to have an open heart.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, that's nicely said. Very nicely said.
So thank you to all the
very nicely said.
Awesome people that that helped us out with their own definitions. I think, hearing all these is was pretty cool. It just kind of puts things into more light, more perspective, maybe.
Yeah.
But it all seems to have that risk, that it's scary, kind of uncomfortable feeling.
It is, and it's okay, but I wanted to have somebody else be a little vulnerable too, because I got a review, and it's that we haven't read.
Oh.
And it was from January 6th, and it's a 5-star review, and it says, "Love and Above Ground. Just started listening to you," and it's from Vincent Boy 27. Just started listening to you guys, and I'm really liking the way you guys connect to us listeners and how down to earth you both are. Funny and really insightful. Thank you for bringing above ground to all of us. Beyond important to get mental health and mental illness in the forefront of all our minds. You have a new fan in me. I'm going to tell all my friends about you guys. Thank you so much. Your work is truly inspirational and so appreciated. So Vincent Boy, 27, man, if you're out there, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. Thank you for those kind words, man.
Yeah,
and I'm glad that you found something that resonates with you, that, you know, I'm glad that it makes you feel less alone and brings you some peace or whatever it brings you, man. And we appreciate that, and we appreciate the review. So if you're out there, you know, and you hear this, when you hear this episode, man, leave us a little thumbs up or throw some horns. Woo!
Or you can always email us. And
you can email us too at abovegroundpodcast@gmail.com.
Let us know what you think about vulnerability and you know what your definition of it is. I felt like I had more to say. I felt like there was a lot more I wanted to say on vulnerability, but I don't know. I think there's a lot to it. That's one thing that I do know. You know, and I think we kind of talked a little bit in the beginning about. I feel like there's different levels. You know, for me, I think that just like that stands out for me. You know,
of vulnerability.
Yeah.
Well, I Yeah, vulnerability is a strength. It really is. And was it on our character strengths list? I don't remember if it was or not.
Yeah, I don't think it was.
Yeah, actually,
which
I
is
don't
weird.
think it was. Yeah, because I was just thinking about that.
Maybe that's why we kind of talked. No, I don't know. I think I remember texting you like, I want to work on it.
You said you wanted to work on.
I wanted to work on some vulnerability. So Will's like, all right, that's the next episode. I was like, fucking great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, again, like, and when Timmy posed that to me, it kind of got me thinking. I'm like, okay. I'm like, how do you teach somebody, or how do you explain to somebody, or get somebody to be more vulnerable? And I don't necessarily, like, again, I think sometimes it can come off as you know, as kind of contrite, and like if people try to expose themselves and in not in the right sense, in the right way, you know what I mean? I think it can come on kind of calculated if you're trying to, like, certain things, I think.
Well, I think when I kind of was telling you, it wasn't necessarily like I want your not that I was saying I don't want it, but it was more of, I think what I was trying to say was like I'm going to like spread my wings a little bit, so just don't point and laugh at times, because this might be new for me.
Yeah, I'm not gonna point and laugh anyway.
I know, but you know what I mean. It's just for me to you know. It's I don't know what it is. I can never put the correct emotion on it. But it's that weird feeling that I guess maybe it's being judged. You know, maybe it comes back to that whole.
I think it does, and I mean,
it always does.
It does, and it's right there in the definition of the word. You're exposing things that can be viewed as weakness, or viewed as you being not good enough, not strong enough,
right.
Not, you know what I mean?
See, so early on, and I think you're right, and I'm glad you said that, because that's where I was going with it early on, and I think if your childhood was different, and if you had more of a stronger foundation, it might, you know what I mean? You might not think twice about being vulnerable, because it might just be a little bit normal.
Or you may not have anything that you feel that you need to be vulnerable about. Because I think that the thing about vulnerability, that at least from the way I've gathered everybody's definitions, is that it's about exposing things that aren't easy to expose. So, and again, I think in a family setting that sweeps everything under the rug, there's no vulnerability there. And you're not going to, and it's going to be, because nobody's willing to acknowledge anything.
Right.
Now, granted, maybe they don't even realize it, because ignorance is not bliss, but that's kind of what that's saying. Ignorance is bliss, because if you don't know what you don't know, and why let it bother you? But it's not. But that's not true. At least in my experience, it's not true.
It's like it's kind of like, for me, it's like that that credit card. You know what I mean? In that moment, it may be easier, but you're going to have that bill at some point.
Yeah. Yes. But I don't necessarily equate that. Like, when I'm looking at vulnerability and you're exposing things, I think a lot of the things we're exposing are things that we didn't want in the first fucking place. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't like, you get a credit card, you're buying stuff that you want. Well, maybe not. You might be like taking care of expenses, but again, I think, like, at least for me, the vulnerability part is, it's all about what you're exposing, as opposed to, you know what you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do, and you're right. You're absolutely right. It's about what you're exposing,
and you're exposing things that can be used against you, can be used as arrows against you.
And again, we talked before about triggers. If you tried to be vulnerable in the past and it blew up in your hand like M80,
an M80,
chances are it's going to be that much harder to be vulnerable again.
Oh, absolutely. Well, if an M80 blows off in your hand, you're probably not picking up fireworks again.
Right, exactly.
Because you're not picking up anything with that hand.
So, you know what I mean? There's that whole, again, it's that whole past experiences, all these circumstances and reactions that we've gathered. And, the brain likes to make patterns and keep things familiar. So it's like, hey, this happened to you before. You remember your hand when you held onto that one M80? It's like, yeah. So this is what's going to happen again when you do it again.
Sure, and that can trigger.
Right.
Like our last, what was it, at 139, we talked about triggers.
Yes.
Like that, and that unfortunately stops a lot of people from growth, because I think being vulnerable is about growth.
Yes.
And I agree with that. I agree, and I forget who said that in their definition, but it really does have to do with growing. And you cannot grow without being vulnerable. Because no seed can grow without being vulnerable, because you're putting it in the ground and you're exposing it to
be vulnerable to the sunlight. You have to be vulnerable to the water.
You're exposing it to the elements, and it's either going to flourish or it's not. And that's a pretty vulnerable thing to be.
Let me say this really quick, because this just came to mind and I forgot, because it was like a secondhand. Angela, the shark whisperer, has a friend, and I'm not saying this verbatim, but it was almost like a 2-word answer, and it was so simple, and it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I forgot about it until whatever you just said reminded me, and it was she said vulnerability for me is getting rid of ego.
Wow, and that's crazy, because I actually just heard that in and maybe this is Gary Zukav, and I might be misconstruing Gary Zukav and Michael Singer because of the 2 books. But that's actually what a spiritual journey embarks on. It's about getting rid of your ego.
Sure.
And what that first step is to just not, like, that's what it is. It's all about getting rid of the ego. But what are you egotistical, like, having, but an ego is not about, I'm great. It's not, that's not just what it is.
No, it's about, like, the guy cut you off. And in your mind, this guy just cut me off because he knew it was me and he cut. No. No one's thinking that it was you. The universe doesn't really care, but that you're there right now. You're a speck. You know
there's
what I mean?
Nothing
like,
personal.
You're not
there's
that, right. Yeah. You're not
there's
that
no,
popular.
There's no
I'm
favorite
sorry,
teams.
But
There's
like
no...
nobody set out this morning and said, I'm going to cut this guy off right here. Like, you know, but that's the ego is telling you that.
The ego is telling you that, but the
And
ego
then the
also
ego-
tells you a lot of stuff.
And the ego's also whispering, like, that dude cut you off. You better go chase him down.
Absolutely.
No one does that to you. That ego's like, come on, no one does that. Get up, put that pedal on the floor. You know? For sure, man. The ego's behind all bastard. It's behind a lot of shit.
It is. But it's only a mask.
It is.
But it is the mask.
Yeah, I was gonna say, more like a shadow, but
Yeah, well, right? It is too.
yeah, the mask. Man, so many masks you gotta take off.
Yeah. Lisa Scott said that, right? About the masks?
No, I think that was Katie.
Oh, that was Katie that said that.
Yeah.
That's right. Oh, that's right. Yeah, taking off all your masks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because that's what we are. We're masks. We're roles. We're whatever, and that's what vulnerability is. Stripping it away, man.
So masks can essentially be armor.
Yeah, absolutely. Masks are armor. I think anything can be armor. I know for me, like a real armor for me, like as a kid, was wearing a tour shirt every day. Like I never went, I didn't, and I
Right.
still like wear something under
Black
my
t-shirt,
regular
yeah.
shirt, and it's like that to me was safe. I felt me. I felt connected to other people.
Sure. Yeah.
And it was also an armor. And so was anger. And I never realized this. My anger anger to me was a reaction to being to whatever. But it was also,
What was it hiding?
it was hiding the fact that I was hurt.
Okay.
And it was the only way that I learned how to deal with it.
Yeah.
But nobody taught me how to quelch that anger. So that anger would come out.
Quelch. That's a good word.
And it would just squelch.
Squelch?
Squelch.
Oh.
Yeah. Maybe I said it wrong first. It's squelch.
Okay. Maybe you said squelch, but I heard quelch. I don't know why.
But yeah, it's like, and I had a really had a hard time with that, and I still like I've gotten really good though. Like that I'm very proud of. I don't get fiery freaking
Right.
eyes, and I'm learning
Feels good,
a lot
doesn't
more.
it?
It does until it gets overwhelming, and then you have to dissipate it doing something, which is why like exercise, walking,
Sure.
like all that stuff is good.
Yeah. Even taking a time out.
Taking
You
a
know?
time out, man. Put yourself in time out.
Right.
It's like just to take a deep breath, but again, you have to breathe through it. And there's a real reason why breathing is such an important thing, because why, like when you sing, when you sing, the breath that you're using to sing is actually what you would be doing if you were to meditate or to breathe deep, because you're breathing, you're belly breathing. You don't want to breathe in your chest. You don't want to breathe up top. You need to fill up your stomach.
Right.
And then when it gets filled up, you just hold it there for a second or two, and then you release it. And that releases a lot of tension, and it resets yourself to be able to think again. And
Sure.
then if something keeps coming up, you just take another couple of breaths. And it really does, you really can be centered by just taking a few deep breaths. But a lot of us forget to breathe all day.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to say about the nervous system, right? I mean, we don't talk about it much, but that whole nervous system, parasympathetic, sympathetic, it breathing, releases hormones that combat, cortisol. It's all scientific stuff. So it's not like, we're sitting here just telling you to stop and breathe, because I get it. That can be, when you're in the moment and you're mad and someone tells you to stop and breathe, you want to
punch them.
Yeah, you might want to make them stop breathing, but there's, but what we're saying is there's definitely benefits to doing this, more than one really in that situation by breathing. It's regulating your nervous system, with or without mental illness is just huge. It's just huge.
Absolutely. And You take a deep breath, and then you can be vulnerable on the other side of it. Take a deep breath and release whatever it is that you got to release.
I like that.
You know?
I like that. Yeah, release it with the out breath.
Yeah. 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 That's what we want. We want to release it on the out breath.
What is that?
I have no idea. I don't know. I was just making up the voice. I was just doing the voice.
Well, we got vulnerable.
Yeah, we did. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who sent us in their definitions of vulnerability. Katie, Lisa Scott, Valéry, Heather,
Janneke, Angela, Autumn, Axton, the Misfit therapist, Dr. A. Hope I'm not missing anybody.
Yeah, I hope we're not missing anybody. Thank you so much. And thank you again for listening to another week of Above Ground Podcast. And please share. We'd also like to hear, if you didn't send us in your definition of vulnerability, please post it on our Instagram page or put it on our Facebook page or send us an email at abovegroundpodcast@gmail.com.
Excellent.
And until next week,
be well.
Be safe.
Be
above.